And yes, I'm biased, but I've seen the results of this, and it's staggering what can be learned.
Well, I mean, it's a much more holistic way of dealing with it. You're getting to the root cause rather than just fumbling around with the symptoms.
Right, exactly.
Michael, a couple of other things I want to mention. We're getting close to the end here, but very interesting thing you came across also in some of your subjects in the books was that they were actually able to see future timelines or lives in a more futuristic.
Well, that's true, although I want to say that the future is filled with probabilities and possibilities. And although we live in the spirit world in a kind of now time of past, present, and future, when we're talking about future incarnations, yes, someone might have a flash that they're a commander on a starship, but that may be only one distant possibility that's going to happen to you in the 22nd century. There's a lot of variables here. It's not set in stone. I am not somebody that really believes much. And, they talk about past regression, and then the subject we're on now is the future, regressing into the future. And I just don't feel that this is highly productive because of the variables. And, it's, to me, it's a very hazy, grayish area because of the variables that will happen to you in your incarnations up to that time where maybe you had a flash of some life that you might live in the future. I don't find it all that productive as far as working with people today. The past certainly is, but the future is open. I mean, we have free will to make all sorts of choices in our lives. It isn't just, locked into a kind of a destiny thing where we don't have much choice over what happens to us. And I think that in a sense, that's what happens when people try to progress, if you will, to use hypnosis progression to see what's going to happen to them in the 22nd century. I don't see that as very productive, and it certainly to me is, I don't know about the validity of that, even though I've had people that have had flashes of the future. I look upon it, as I say, a scale of possibilities and probabilities, and it's mostly dealing in the now, I think, is what's productive.
Michael, one of the subjects in your book that also, one of the accounts you give that really stuck with me was, because throughout the theme is always that the people we meet in the Between Lives area, the guides and so on, are very kind and benevolent and loving and all this. At one point you were in a regression with someone and they said, "We know who you are," and I found that somewhat menacing. I don't know if you can think of the instance where I'm thinking about, and you were stopped from going any further.
Well, it's the interpretation there, I think, of the client, and perhaps, I wish I could remember which case that was, but I was quoting him, verbatim,
right.
And it may have come across as being a little ominous, and maybe if you didn't read the printed word, "We know who you are," you would see that there's much benevolence there. I fight this all the time, or I used to when I was on the road a lot. A lot of people, Emily, believe in spiritual attachments. They believe that there's an evil forces out there. And these are the sensationalists, and a lot of them have very fundamentalist leanings, when in fact, I don't find it true at all. It's a situation where yes, I mentioned that a soul can be kind of lost if they've got unfinished business. This is not the same as attaching to your mind and taking your body over as an evil demonic force. I hate to say this, but there's a lot of religion that comes into this in terms of fundamentalism. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about people who are moderate in their thinking, but people who believe in the devil and evil as being forms that define us. I don't find this to be true at all about the afterlife. There are people who are a little worried about going through this process for fear that they'll see something horrible on the other side, and they never do. They find that it's a very benevolent place, and I think it's interesting that they did a survey a number of years ago about the difference between belief systems in authoritarian gods, angry gods versus benevolent gods. And it seems that it's kind of split in terms of the way people believe, but about 25% of the people that were interviewed believed in a distant God who doesn't interact with the world and is not angry with us. It's more of a cosmic force that sets the laws of nature in motion and then lets us deal with our day-to-day lives on Earth. So a lot of what we take that happens to us that's difficult and hard, we translate it into some sort of evil or demonic force, when in fact that's not really the case at all. So your question branches off into a lot of other areas, Emily, that would take me quite a while to explain in terms of what I've learned. But one of my basic truths is that people are not born evil. I mean, we may have brains that have abnormal brain chemistry, and we may have children that are brought up in terribly dysfunctional households where they become monsters as adults because of the way they were treated as children. But this is not an outside demonic force that is inhabiting these people and directing them towards evil. So, it's a subject that when I was lecturing on the road, often got into by people who were fearful.
Michael, it's been wonderful talking to you. Very interesting. You mentioned at the beginning of the show that you had a new book coming out, or were working with some people on the book. When do you think that is going to be
Well,
published?
we hope October. It's going to be called Memories of the Afterlife, and these are going to be 32 stories of personal transformation and the benefits of LBL. My other books have described the process and what happens, but not so much about the benefits of Life Between Lives regression to the clients that have come to us, where this book is going to stress that. I do the introduction and footnoting, but the cases are, which I think adds validity to my work, by others. And there's 32 people that are going to give cases in this particular book, and it's going to be quite interesting. So before we leave, Emily, I would like to also have a moment to tell your listeners what they can do to get information about this field. Mm-hmm. And I'd just like to say that our website is newtoninstitute.org. That's all lowercase, one word, just newtoninstitute.org. And on that website, they can order books, but mostly, most important, they can find referrals. In other words, they can find people who are well trained by us in various parts of the United States and around the world that they can contact for their own spiritual regression. There's many ways in which people can have access to this information, and I'll just say one last thing, that if they want to write to me, they need to write to me in care of the publisher, and that address is in the front pages of all my books, and always include a self-addressed stamped envelope, and I'll do my best to respond.
Michael, you're retired now, so you no longer practice, but are you still very involved in the subject and the research?
I try to be. I'm getting close to 80 now, Emily, and I've really slowed down. Mm-hmm. I try to answer questions that are very specific. Sometimes they require a hypnosis regression session to answer them. My activity is primarily in the field of education in terms of our training programs. I like to see that they're well run and that people get who come to these training programs to learn about my methodology and to deal with the discoveries I've made. I want to make sure that they're good people, and I want to make sure that the instruction they get is also very well done. So that's kind of my naturally we have what is known as E-Group, where we have a group of hypnotherapists who are in our organization where we exchange information, and I try to help there too. But I've really slowed down since my very active days, Emily, I must admit that.